Great. All right, let's get going since we have a very packed agenda. First, welcome to the webinar to officially launch our Climate Resilience Playbook. First, I want to thank everyone for joining today. This is really exciting as our team's been working really hard, and we'll talk more about it soon. Just want to let everyone know that we will be recording this webinar for those who have to miss it. And so with that, feel free to turn off your camera, stay mute, and or let us know if you have any concern. But we will have a recording of this one. So again, welcome. Before we jump in to talk more about this and share with you all the wonderful things that we've done for this resource, I just want to share with you the agenda for today. Again, it's a packed 1 hour. We'll go over the playbook. We'll share with you sort of the development, engagement and development process over the past 2 years. We'll demo the resource. And we have some folks here today to share about the alignment with and how we can use this resource to align with state climate resilience planning and implementation efforts, other resources, and how we're all can together achieve the wonderful state climate goals set ahead. Before we jump into all of that, I'm just very honored to have some folks at the state today to provide some opening remarks. And with that, I would love to welcome our climate chief, Melissa Hoffer, to share some of your thoughts on this. So I think we can turn over to Chief Hoffer.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. I am just absolutely thrilled to be here today. And I'm very excited to see this tool. I think if you've heard the governor and if you've heard Secretary Tepper and the LG and I were really focused on getting things done on the ground. And this tool is really going to help with that. You know, when you are a municipality and there are so many things to balance and you're getting hit with all of the impacts that we're seeing. We actually were just out last night in Ashfield hearing about folks who had dealt with flooding, with fires, you know, with impacts to their homes, with what it's costing municipality. It's really helpful to have a tool that can help clarify and offer you specific pathways, this the playbook action tool that you have that is helping people think, okay, I want to do something about heat. What can I do to get those kinds of ideas? And then to have actually available to you a blueprint for action and resources to help you accomplish that. That's what we need on the ground right now to get work done, actual projects done to help keep our communities safer. So it's common sense and it's pragmatic and it's right on time, all the things that we know that we need to be doing. So I'm so grateful to the teams that worked on this, for MAPC's leadership, for the collaboration with the state and my colleagues, Catherine Antos and Maya Mansfield, and everybody who's been a part of this. This is an example of what we need more of. So I'm just thrilled. I'm very grateful for the time. I know how much energy it takes to do this, to engage. And I really appreciate in this time when we're seeing such pushback around these concepts to be leading on climate and to keeping equity at the core, because we know that's still an important value for the Commonwealth. So just huge congratulations to everybody. And thank you so much for the opportunity to join you guys today as you're kicking this off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hoffer, and really, first and foremost, thank you for your leadership and for this wonderful opportunities to collaborate with your team and other key players across the state. So thank you. And with that, I will turn over to Undersecretary for Decarbonization and Resilience, Catherine Antos, to share a few words as well. Catherine.
Thank you so much, Van, and thank you so much, Chief Hoffer. It's great to see so many of you online today and see the interest in the Resilience Playbook. I'm personally very excited about today's launch. This is a great collaboration, and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission have been co-leading this effort with funding from the Barr Foundation in partnership with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. What this partnership means is that we are developing a tool that works statewide by working with our Eastern and our Western regional planning agencies. So we're going to learn more about the Resilience Playbook. It's an online tool that is going to help municipal staff turn their plans into action by providing guidance and expertise and examples from peers, because we don't have time to be reinventing the wheel. It is tailored to all kinds of communities, from urban to rural. This playbook is a key recommended action of our resilient mass finance strategy that we've been working on for the past year, and we're in the process of finalizing. The finance strategy lays out a roadmap for how Massachusetts will fund and finance and scale the pace of implementation of resilience measures by stretching resources further. And one of the strategic priorities in the resilient mass finance strategy is to make projects easier to implement. That's where this playbook fits in. It's going to do just that with step-by-step guidance for communities. The playbook complements and is coordinated with EEA's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, or MVP, which works with communities to develop climate resilience plans and action grant funding to implement the projects that will make cities and towns more resilient. Last year, we awarded $52 million in action grants, and in the Mass Ready Act filed by Governor Healy in June, we're proposing to more than double our authorization for the MVP program, $315 million over 5 years. 349 of our 351 cities and towns have MVP plans, and we recently launched MVP 2.0, help cities and towns more meaningfully engage with community organizations, because as Chief Hoffer noted, centering equity in this work is so critically important as we support those who are most impacted by the impacts of climate change. Both MVP and the Resilience Playbook are about helping communities move more effectively from climate planning to action, and I'm excited to integrate the playbook into our MVP program. It means we're learning from each other. It means making sure no one feels like they're on their own. It means leveling the playing field and making investments that avoid costly damages and impacts down the road and keeps our residents safe. It has involved a huge amount of partner outreach over the last year, because when it comes to climate resilience, we know that only together we can do hard things. So I want to thank everyone who's made this happen. MAPC, Van Du and Emma Zahner, and also the data services team. At the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Angela Panantoni, Catherine Ratte, Patty Gambarini, and Ken Comia. At the Barr Foundation, Khalila Barnett. And then with EEA's MVP team, Maya Mansfield, who was one of the ones with the original vision for this project and brought up many of these partners together, Tara Runston, Hillary King, and the rest of the MVP team. And also the many state agency partners and so many of you who engaged and helped shape this playbook that we're going to hear more about today. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ken Comia, Deputy Director of Land Use and Environment at the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Thank you to both Chief Hoffer and Undersecretary Antos. Thank you to EEA for your leadership and for partnership on this important work. And obviously, none of this would be possible also with our partnership with MAPC and getting to work with Van and team. I'm really glad to be here today on behalf of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, along with my colleague Angela Panachone, who you will see later this afternoon. Out here in Western Mass, and Chief Hoffer just mentioned this with regards to Ashfield, we see firsthand how climate change is showing up in different ways, whether it's extreme weather threatening our drinking water supplies, dirt roads washing out, or the challenge of making sure our small towns with limited staff can still take meaningful steps towards resilience. What makes the playbook so powerful is that it doesn't reinvent the wheel. It lifts up the great work already happening in our communities. Over the past year, we engaged with our many municipalities, community organizations, and volunteers documenting what's working so others can replicate it. This really is your work reflected back in one piece, and we hope that you'll see yourselves and your partners in it. So for those that are in attendance, hopefully, some of the conversations here are things that you've heard already. I'm excited to see how the communities will use this tool, from MVP action grant applications to updating bylaws to simply finding new partners and fresh ideas to move from planning into action. And thank you, Van. And I think it's over to you.
Thank you, Ken. I should introduce myself. My name is Van. I am the Director of Environmental Planning here at MAPC. And so again, thank you, Chief Hoffer, Undersecretary Antos, and Director Comia for welcoming us into this webinar. And so now I will take a few minutes to just give you a quick overview about the Climate Resilience Playbook, and then my colleagues and partners will share and dive into details and hopefully some additional resources that we could share and with some Q&A. So what is the Climate Resilience Playbook? So we had talked over many months around this. And so we've decided that it needs to be user-friendly, interactive, and first and foremost, it needs to be a living, evolving resource so that knowing that things will change, we will have shifting priorities, changing just to meet the local as well as the state climate goals. And so with that, we made this playbook to be an online tool resources that provide guidance to municipalities in pursuing actions that advance climate resilience in their communities. It's a framework for, again, recommended actions and step-by-step guidance to do so, transitioning from planning into implementation. The idea is that we understanding and recognizing that communities are at different places in space in terms of where they are in their climate work. And so we want to make sure that anyone, whether you're in the planning stage to thinking about finding more implementation solutions, you're able to check in and apply some of the resources and case studies and recommendations provided in this playbook. The playbook centers around 5 themes that acknowledge how intersectional and cross-cutting resilience work really is. So here are also understanding that we can't really fit an action or a strategies nicely into the box, but sometimes we kind of have to sort of make sure that we can provide you with some clear guidance and roadmaps to follow. So and so the 5 key themes that we've decided on are housing, ecosystems, natural environments, communities and government, economy, and infrastructure. The playbook seeks to fill in gaps and challenges and opportunities that identify through our conversation with communities, community organizations, advocacy groups, community leaders, municipal staff across the Commonwealth. And to Ken's point earlier, that we're not just starting all of this from scratch. This is a reflection of the success, the work that you've done, as well as identifying the additional opportunities that we can all take to advance climate resilience in our community. We can't talk about climate justice and being resilient without addressing the historic and ongoing injustices faced by marginalized communities, our community members to date. And so in this playbook, it seeks to really center equity considerations, really kind of combining that climate and social equity values together, so that starting from pre-planning through post-construction of a project, equity is reflected throughout. We're also in this playbook hope to explore how municipalities and their communities can co-lead and co-implement climate solutions based on the projects that we've learned from communities, from municipalities to date. They're so great, and really creative and innovative, both from the municipal side as well as from the solutions that have presented by our community partners. And so we really see the synergy, and to make sure everyone's on the same page and can align in terms of your goals and aspirations, and also how can we work together toward the common goals of achieving climate resilience. And we also recognize that this is a statewide resource, and as we're learning that communities have different needs and different priorities based on your sizes, your location, where everyone's at, And so part of the playbook is hoping to tailor projects or providing recommendations based on specific community types and applicability, to make sure that this is something that it's not a one size fit all, and that every community will have an opportunity to really address your priorities, your needs, and opportunities accordingly. So I will talk through some key features of the playbook just to give you kind of a quick overview. And so the first key feature of the playbook is planning resources in terms of that kind of providing the guidance on how to think about climate vulnerability, for example, how to build, what are some of the building resilience building primer, linking to existing and detailed resources, case studies that are already available in the state as well as across the region. So some of this may be a 101, information that you can also use to communicate to community members, to folks who are new in this climate resilience space, as well as just a reminder of how to continue to center some of the social equity elements in the work, planning and implementation of climate resilience throughout. One thing that I want to point out is this really great partnership with Leslie Jonas, a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and Indigenous land and water conservationists, that together, and we're so grateful for her guidance and her support and participation in building a guiding resource in terms of how to partner with Indigenous communities. So I hope you will take a moment to check that out as well. It really is a living guidance document and really show how we can all find partnerships together to kind of and that synergy to build a resilient space for everyone. And so again, as you look through these resources, if there are additional information that you seek or any recommendations that you have, we would love to hear from you, and we'll provide more of that information at the end of the webinar. The second key feature of the playbook, and I think this is most sought after, is this online interactive database, action tools. This lists the potential actions that municipalities and community members may take to address climate threats locally. The portion of these actions includes detailed guidance on, and some of it is step-by-steps, case studies of what have been done. And so again, you can tailor it based on the potential climate threats that your communities face, the type of projects that you're looking for, planning or assessment, construction, education or outreach, etc. And also just the, whether it's one of the climate themes that I mentioned earlier. Is it housing that you want to focus on? Is it infrastructure that you want to take a look at to see what are some of the potential solutions that is applicable to your community? And so the building off of this action tools, we're able to create right now about 20 implementation blueprints. And I will say, and growing as we're continuing to get feedback, as well as, learning in terms of additional actions that we can continue to develop. So these blueprints bring together a lot of crowdsourced advice from community partners, state agencies, municipalities, those that have done the work and or have been exploring in terms of the implementation next steps to bring a project into implementation. So think of these blueprints as recipes, hopefully that it provides you step-by-step how to implement or execute an action. So who should use this playbook? And so we definitely couldn't come up and shouldn't have come up with one answer. So here are just some example And I just want to show this here. My colleague Emma later on when demoing the tool will go into a little bit more details too. But as you can see here that there are many scenarios, many different cases and opportunities in terms of how we're hoping that you're able to plug in this playbook and find the right solutions and or opportunities to try out and execute in your communities. So with that, I will turn over to Angela at MAPC to share a brief summary on the engagement process that we did to develop this playbook.
Thank you so much, Fan. My name is Angela Panichone, and I am a senior environmental planner at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. We are the regional planning agency for Hampden and Hampshire County, which has 43 municipalities. But our role throughout the engagement process was to focus more on Western Mass inclusively. Next slide. So, how did we do our engagement? In order to kind of shape everything Van just outlined and presented, we did conduct robust engagement for close to a year and a half. Our goal was to reach as many municipalities and community members across the state as possible and focus on ensuring that we're also getting a lot of the rural communities that don't typically participate. We started in fall 2023 by doing a deep dive and compiling a database of as many past and ongoing resilience projects led by municipalities that we could find. This involved looking at MVP action grants, as well as a range of other state and federal grant program and projects. Our goal was to see if there was a common project type, what that was, and also to identify any gaps or what was missing. We also conducted a mapping exercise of all partners we could think of involving in the engagement process or that should be involved. After that, we administered a survey, had over 250 responses. Then last summer, we conducted a wide range of focus groups with both municipalities and community partners across the state. We had different community types. So we had inland rural, coastal rural, inland urban, coastal urban. And then after that, we took all that information, developed blueprints, and sent them out to all of our partners for reviews, comments, edits, changes. And then finally this spring, we conducted a user testing focus group with several municipal employees. That was very interesting. It was a very wide mix of not only community types, but also municipal staff and or border committee members. We had, paid planners to volunteer conservation commissioners. And from that, we will continue to make updates. Just wanted to highlight this map. I think it's really interesting. So throughout the focus groups and surveys, we heard from 87 cities and towns across the state. We also talked with more than 80 community partners, ranging from community development organizations to watershed councils, to youth climate groups, housing organizations. We also collaborated with more than 10 state agencies and 11 technical assistance providers, consultants, and then had many one-to-one follow-ups on our specific blueprints thereafter. So, what did we learn from our surveys and focus groups? We began with the survey. One of the interesting things we learned from our survey is 94% of municipal respondents and 74% of partners are all currently working on resilience projects or plan to in the next year. For municipalities specifically, they identified some of their issues, the main ones being capacity building, staffing, and zoning and regulatory update changes. Oh, you jumped too quick, sorry. So yes, the challenges included limited staffing, volunteers having to wear too many hats, lack of climate-specific technical expertise, and even, figuring out where to start or how much stuff costs developing a comprehensive budget. So, for example, small towns operate with part-time planners, or some are 100% volunteer boards and committees. Oftentimes, highway departments in smaller towns consist of 1 or 2 employees. Some are still even elected. And then you have other options where the same person wears the same hat in several towns. So, like, common ones are shared board of health or shared veterans agent. We took that as an opportunity to dive in and develop blueprints addressing a lot of these, specifically staffing and how to build those relationships with your community to get resources that you lack internally to proceed with grants. Opportunities that we identified. One of the biggest ones was promoting regional opportunities. So one of the cool things with the tool is you could actually filter for blueprints that are aimed to be regional and not just one town. Also, again, finding ways, especially in Western Mass, to let towns know, one, what other municipalities nearby are doing, and 2, what a lot of the local environmental or health agencies are doing. Building capacity and integrating resilience projects into already existing plans was another good way to incorporate. Next slide. Sorry, I jumped myself. Excellent. So how did we incorporate all this feedback? To address concerns about capacity, we provided several blueprints that can be administered regionally, as I had just said. For instance, one of them focuses on how to create a shared climate staff role across municipalities. Historically, municipalities have shared services related to public health, public works, and other areas. So this gives them a template to expand. Also within the blueprints, we have sections on how to tailor to actions to specific community types. So if you're more urban with larger staff, you could pick more complex projects. And now I will hand it over to Emma from MAPC to provide a brief demo and go over some of the tools that I just talked about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. My name is Emma Zahner, and I'm a Senior Clean Energy and Climate Planner at MAPC. And for the next portion, we're going to dive into the tool and how it works. As Van mentioned, the tool is a range of potential audiences, and we'll show you some examples to kind of demonstrate that. So before I dive into the demo, I wanted to give a big shout out to MAPC's data services team, which created this platform. Our data services team is increasingly thinking about how tools like this can help summarize best practices and help avoid communities having to reinvent the wheel on similar projects that have already been pursued elsewhere. So for this demo, we're hoping to provide an overall user orientation and then walk through a few of these scenarios that are up on the screen. And we'll put the link in the chat to the playbook so you can follow along if you'd like. Awesome. So to get oriented when you first arrive at the site or whenever you press this logo in the left-hand corner, you'll be taken to this homepage. And from the homepage, you can go to the tool's two main pages. There's Playbook Actions and Planning Resources. So today we'll start with the Playbook Actions. This page is set up to allow users to browse all of the 120 plus actions in the playbook and to select specific factors to narrow down to a list of actions most relevant to their community. So you can view these as these kind of square action cards, or you can also view them as a list format if that's easier to browse a large number of actions. So when you click into one of these actions, we'll see additional information. So for example, if we click into Capital Improvement Program, this card will pop up, and we'll see these additional key considerations. We'll also see that for this action, there is a blueprint, so you could open it up in a new tab, and it will open up a new PDF. And then you can also scroll down within the card and see that there are resource links, related actions, and then additional information refers to the factors or criteria that you searched by. And if you prefer to see this in a new window, you can also go to the top of the screen to view it in the full screen. So now that we started that basic orientation, we can return to two scenarios that we briefly previewed on the slide to further illustrate how we use the filters and navigate the action cards. So our first scenario is a conservation commission has received feedback from community members that inland and riverine flooding are causing significant problems in a certain section of town. The commission is aware the local watershed council and regional conservation partnerships have already begun to address this challenge through volunteer efforts and is now exploring what the municipality can do to help address these concerns. So now that we're at the actions table, the commissioner might select from priority climate threats, inland and stormwater flooding, and then under project types, it might select planning and assessment, education and outreach, and regulatory and policy. We can keep scrolling through the options and we see implementation effort. We've roughly categorized these by a scale of moderate, complex, significant. So for this one, maybe we'll select complex. And these filters can help us to identify projects that could be accomplished with relatively limited staff capacity and increased volunteer efforts. So once we have our selected factors, we click Apply Filters, and we get this list of both actions that have blueprints and those that don't. You can see that's indicated by the blue lining on the action cards. So from an initial glance, it looks like the commissioner might want to look at a few of these actions, potentially climate resilient bylaws and ordinances, culvert assessments, maybe transportation infrastructure assessments, maybe the buddy system, and potentially a land acquisition program. So the commissioner can click through into the blueprints for some of these actions to understand what other communities have done. So for example, for culvert assessments, we might click into this and go to the implementation blueprint. That'll open up in a new window, and we can scroll down to the section about what implementation requires. So in this case, a specific protocol that staff or volunteers would need to be trained on. We can also keep scrolling through the blueprint to the bottom where we have our resources and look at examples of how other communities have approached these assessments in the past. So after reviewing, the commissioner may jot down these actions, look further into some of the actions, and take this list back to the next Conservation Commission meeting to discuss and understand what priorities related to flooding are most important to community members, whether that's assessing culverts for prioritization for repair, identifying land to acquire in the floodplain to add additional storage, or developing a plan for community members and emergency responders to reach all residents that may be isolated by things like dirt road washouts or culvert failures. So that's our first scenario, and I'm going to move on to the second example now. And to do that, I'll press reset filters, and we are taken back to the actions that show up, which are the blueprints when you go to the actions tool at first. So for our second scenario, we're going to think about an environmental planner in an MVP 2.0 community is brainstorming ideas for a seed project that would help reduce the urban heat island effect. And through the MVP 2.0 process, community members have identified urban heat islands as a priority and are specifically interested in how the municipality and partners can help reduce the impacts of heat in places people spend a lot of time. So that might be at home and at work. So looking at the filters again, we can select extreme heat from the priority climate threats. And then since we're doing the MVP process, we might go down to the criteria or the options for MVP community systems, so housing and economy. And then in this case, maybe we only want to see the actions that have implementation blueprints, so we can turn this toggle on. Then we'll press apply filters to generate a list of actions that are relevant to these search criteria. And again, the actions can be viewed as cards, or if we press on the right-hand corner here, as a list. So now that we have our criteria, we have a list of 9 implementation blueprints that appear, and the planner can scan through the high-level action descriptions to decide if any might be worth considering. So since they're focused on housing and on-the-job safety, there might be particularly relevant ones. For example, residential cooling and utility support. Ensure residents, especially those vulnerable to extreme heat, can stay cool, healthy, and safe in their homes by promoting and enhancing utility assistance programs and supporting procurement and installation of heat pumps and box fans. And in the short term, energy efficient air conditioners. So we can see just by scrolling, we can open the blueprint, but we can also scroll down through the action card to see considerations and to check out what some of the resource links are. So for example, see a case study about Chelsea's AC unit lottery program, and also some template materials for outreach. And we can click on this directly to open it in a new window. We also will see related actions. So we might be interested in residential climate preparation outreach. And if we open that, it'll open in a new tab and take us straight to the action card for that. And then as we look back at the full list of actions, we might also be interested in the worker safety outreach. So we can click through to the implementation blueprint for this one, and kind of scroll down to look at what the initial recommended implementation steps are. So identifying workers in your community who are likely to face dangerous climate impacts on the job, brainstorming existing municipal connections to relevant employers and employees, and then consulting relevant data on local employers. We can also scroll down to the relevant resources and find that the state and other partners have created a lot of sample outreach materials that could be easily adapted to a local context. So going back to our actions, the planner can bring some ideas for seed projects to the MVP 2.0 core team and start to think through which partners will be necessary for implementation. So that might be community action agencies or utilities, and that may be supporting and promoting existing heat pump distribution programs and utility payment programs. So those are our 2 scenarios. And in the last few minutes of the demo, I'll turn to the second feature of the playbook, which is the planning resources that we've discussed. And on this page, you'll find a list of downloadable resources, as well as a PDF viewer for the main playbook that can be viewed and scrolled through here. And then, for example, we can open up one of these by clicking and seeing it in a new tab, or we can download it and save it on our computer and print it out from there. So we're going to have time for questions later, but just wanted to conclude the demo by highlighting how you can provide direct feedback on the user experience and recommend content changes as well. If you go to the bottom here, you'll see we have playbook actions, planning resources, and then there's also these two links, one for playbook feedback and one for more technical issues to report. So if you click on playbook feedback, you'll see a number of questions about, are there resources you want to add? Are there actions that you think are missing from the playbook? We've already got some great feedback about places where the playbook could provide more information, and we really appreciate seeing that feedback. Overall, we hope this can be a living, evolving resource, and we see so much value in crowdsourcing all this different information, especially since preparing for climate resilience spans so many different subjects and fields. So we hope to identify opportunities to continue building out the tool, such as adding new actions and creating new implementation blueprints. And this is a space right now where you can provide us with that direct feedback. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the MVP team to talk briefly about how this work relates to other state initiatives on resilience. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma and team. It is so exciting to see this and to see all of this incredible information in one place and so easily accessible. So great job. Yeah, I think just getting to the right slide, but my name is Maya Mansfield. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Resilience at EEA. And I just wanted to share a few ways that the playbook is tied into sort of the broader state efforts around climate resiliency. The state's overarching framework for planning for resiliency is called Resilient Mass. That is our state plan. It calls out the main climate hazards the state is facing, how it's going to impact our communities, and the actions that we're taking to reduce that risk. And you can find this report and all of these things and so much more on resilient.mass.gov. Resilient.mass, our main resiliency programs all fall under this plan. MVP, which Kara is going to speak to in a second, are our primary funder of local resiliency actions, and where many of these actions in the playbooks are competitive projects for this program. And Resilient Coasts, our new statewide strategy that was recently out for public comment for coastal climate adaptation. And the playbook is really informed by these two great programs, in addition to all of the engagement that Angela spoke about. And the actions that you'll see in the playbook showcase really the best of what we're seeing across the state and aligns with the recommendations within these plans and these sort of broader strategies for how we want to move forward. There's also a connection between the new Resilient Mass metrics framework that was out in the last few months, and the resiliency metrics are something that you can search for as part of the playbook to align some of your actions with some of the broader state goals and targets around resiliency. And I also just wanted to mention again the Resilient Mass Finance strategy that Undersecretary Antos mentioned at the beginning, still under development, but is where we're really focused on these strategic priorities of how to scale and grow the level of investment and focus in these projects that we are seeing and want to see more of across the state. And how do we really build the capacity through tools like this? How do we make projects easier to implement by streamlining access to information and funding? And so the playbook is an amazing example of how we want to do that. And we are excited to hear your feedback as you start using it. And so we can keep building it out further so that you have the information and templates and examples and best practices you need to take action. And I also want to flag the new Environment and Climate One Stop that was released yesterday, which is another sort of core part of the effort to take these projects ideas that you see in the playbook and move them towards funding through the state in a more streamlined way. And so the Environment and Climate One Stop will bring together 7 EEA resilience-oriented grant programs into one common application. And we have just opened the expressions of interest so you can start talking to state programs around how to move some of these projects to funding. So thank you all again for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Kara, the MVP director, for a few minutes to speak a little bit more about the connections with MVP.
Thank you, Maya. Yeah, I'm Kara Runston, the director of the MVP program. As Maya mentioned, I use she, her pronouns. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the connection to the MVP program. Me and my team have been really excited to collaborate with MAPC and PVPC on this amazing resource. And we see a lot of connections for integrating it into the MVP program. Also just wanted to give a shout out to Hillary King in particular, our Central Regional Coordinator, who has been really spearheading this effort from the EEA side. So thanks, Hillary. So in terms of MVP, one of the major connections between the playbook and MVP is through the MVP Planning 2.0 program. So many of you are familiar with that program, and Catherine touched on it at the beginning, but we have a resource that we call Guides for Equitable and Actionable Resilience, or GEAR for short, that is really sort of the main resource and tool that we promote through the MVP program. And that essentially gives communities the ability to go into this tool, click a climate hazard that they are interested in learning more about, like drought, for example, and a community system that they want to see how it interacts with that climate hazard. So they could, for example, click food and water, and it would come up with a guide that gives them sort of mapping resources and guided actions and conversations to start in their communities. And one of the sections in that guide is actions to consider. And so we see the playbook as integrating directly into that section of the GEAR guides. And we're going to be plugging that in and rolling that out over the course of the next month. So we're really excited to do that. And then Emma also mentioned in her demo that the playbook itself can be filtered by the MVP community systems and also different state relevant filters like the resilient mass metrics that Maya touched on as well. Next slide, please. And then I also just wanted to point out that in each of the implementation roadmaps, we have, or blueprints, sorry, we have a specific section that calls out potential funding and technical assistance for each of those actions. So you'll be able to see different resources and supports that might be available for those actions. I will give the caveat that not every single one of them might be competitive for MVP funding, but there are lots of other types of state programs and things that they might be competitive for. So we really try to capture all of those resources in that section of the blueprint. So with that, I think I will pass it back over to Emma and Van.
Thanks so much, Angela, Maya, and Kara for providing, and Emma, sorry, the one who's going through the demo of the tools, all this information. We know that it's a lot of information within an hour, and so don't you worry, we're here. So reach out anytime if you have questions. To Emma's point, there's a feedback link. Please send us feedback. We would love for this to be a living, evolving resource that will be able to keep updating and making sure that the priorities and blueprints that we're creating are appropriate and timely. To answer some of the quick questions that I see so far, yes, we will make sure that the slide decks will be available along with the recording of this webinar as well. And we know that we might not be able to get through all the questions and answers, or you may have questions after this. So we'll try to go through as many questions as we can now. But after 1 o'clock, some of our team members will be able to stay on a little bit as well if you would like to have a additional Q&A time with us. And then after that, we will go through the chat and the Q&A sections to synthesize all the questions we have and response and make it into a document and to be available on the Resilient Playbook website as well, so that you can kind of see the common Q&A. Okay. So with that, I think, Emma, we also have a question for the participants, right? If you want to run through that real quick, and then.
Yes, just really quickly before we dive into the Q&A, we wanted to give you a chance to share how might you use the playbook to support your work, and we can briefly share a few answers.
Okay.
And then as
So,
this role, yeah, Van,
oh, I'm sorry. So, okay. So the question is, how might you use the playbook to support your work, your current work, or, you know, any ideas that you have? Would love to hear what you say. I see people submitting their response. So exciting. So while we're giving folks a few minutes to send us your ideas and feedback, I'm going to go through some of the questions I'm seeing just to get them going. So the first one is there guidance in the playbook on how to balance competing climate priorities such as transit and trees? This is a really great question. So as of right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, team, but we don't exactly have the response to this. However, I hope that you will explore the action tools. And for example, there's cross-sectional, in terms of actions overlapping with the theme. So one that I saw right away as I was just kind of looking is a recommended actions to consider or doing climate resilience, doing a resilience pedestrian transportation planning, thinking about how to plan and implement solutions to balance sort of the public, for public transportation corridor that limit extreme heat exposure, maintaining, flood mitigation solutions and things like that. So there's the balance in each of the actions that we provide, that may be some of that information. And so the idea is that you'll go through these actions, and then with that, there are step-by-steps for you to kind of explore what makes the most sense for your communities, as well as additional resources, case studies, funding resource opportunities, so that you see what makes sense, and how can you build a case to help prioritize some of the climate needs and solutions in your communities. I would also say that it doesn't have to be either transit or trees. I think there are opportunities to do both. And as you can see, the recent state efforts, have been really encouraging that, for example, through the environmental and housing initiatives. So hopefully similarly, you feel that with the mobility and environmental work as well. But we'd love to talk more, and please send us feedback and any suggestions you have so that we can continue to gather the resources to support you with that. Anyone else on the team would like to add? Okay. Okay, so while I'll look for the next questions to share with the group now, but Emma, it looks like we closed the poll, and do you want to share some of the ideas we received?
Yes, thanks, Van. So we received a lot of good answers. Some of them I'll just read out to look for examples from other communities, so we don't have to recreate the wheel, sourcing ideas that have worked in other communities. Another answer is helping generate ideas for MVP grant applications. Another answer is see the universe of all potential resilience strategies, so understanding the landscape. And another user said I would use this in my research by possibly adding blueprints into climate action plans, and specifically those focused on environmental justice. And I'll just read two more and then pass it back. Create a prioritized list of projects programming for the next 3 years, from low-hanging fruit to more complex projects. And then creating a climate action plan for our town, and this will be a key resource. So thank you everyone for sharing those, and we'll look through all of them after the webinar, but pass it back to you, Van.
Thanks so much, Emma. All right, the next question, and this may be for you, Maya and Kara. I know you touched a little bit on it, but maybe clarify a little bit more. What are the available funding opportunities for these potential project ideas? And or are they just potential MVP grant proposals? Kara?
Sure, I can hop in here. Yeah, so I mentioned this a little bit in my portion of the presentation, but each of the implementation blueprints has a section that specifically talks about the different programs that could be relevant to the action. So I would say start there and look at those. I would also suggest that if you have a idea for a climate resilience project that you would like to pursue, that you submit an expression of interest to the Eco One Stop that Maya mentioned that was just released yesterday, because that is the new initiative where we're going to try and match folks to the right state program so that you don't have to do all of that thought process on the front end. So those are my pitches.
Thanks, Kara. Emma, one question coming in, if you could remind us, do the case study provide contact information if more information is desired or needed for follow-up and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. For the case studies, we really drew on what already exists out there, because there's so many like MVP action grant case studies. Many organizations have created their own case studies, so it sort of varies based on the source of the case study. And I think for some of them, it'll be easy to figure out who to contact, or at least know which town to reach out to start. Yeah, I think that's it.
This next question, perhaps Angela, you could jump in and help out. So curious to hear more about the youth focus group and how the feedback informed the playbook. So maybe Emma and Angela who led the engagement portion, but if you can recall sort of your connection with the youth group, as well as I would kind of want to expand this question to any kind of other key stakeholder groups that you thought was really valuable in terms of bringing in the feedback and the input for this playbook development.
Do you want to start with the youth part, Emma, and then I'll follow up on the second portion?
Sure. So for the youth specific question, we had a great focus group, and it was organized by, or we reached out to Mass Audubon, which already had a group they were meeting with students across the state. And so we had a really great focus group where we shared kind of the themes that we've all mentioned earlier, and then also asked them directly, how do you want to interact with municipal staff and community partners? And they provided some great insights about the best way to reach students. And a lot of it was also like reaching parents as well through this efforts. And we also asked them really what their main priorities were, or if they were to work on a project in their town, what would be the top project they would work on. So we incorporated a lot of their input into specifically the community engagement and climate resilience planning document, as well as throughout just the actions that we selected. Turn it to you, Angela.
Other targeted groups, I mean, we had over 80 community partners. Lots of land trusts, which I was surprised. I kind of think almost every land trust in the state participated in one of the focus groups, as well as many housing organizations. And also to circle back with Emma with the education, I did a one-on-one with the Hitchcock Center out of Amherst, which does youth education to help supplement blueprints and youth activities. I mean, what I thought was most impressive was I counted 27 like really small rural towns in Western Massachusetts that participated and provided lots of feedback, which 90% was positive and just incorporating. But it was really good to, have the focus groups and have Ango be with the small rural towns and allow them to kind of vent a little so we could get more of the challenges that they face that they don't talk about a lot.
Great. Thank you, Emma and Angela. one question, and this, I think, Maya, just if you can reiterate as well, but the question, sorry, oh, I lost track of it now. Oh dear. But basically, how, you know, the recommended actions in the, if you could highlight some additional example, I know you kind of went through it, but highlight some of the example, how this playbook can align with the governor's climate initiatives, any new initiatives, for example, regarding to housing and environmental review process that the governors announced yesterday, for example. So some of the example ideas that you have.
Sure. I mean, really the goal of the playbook, as everyone has emphasized, is to try and level the playing field across the state as to what are best practices to advancing climate resiliency across a range of different topic areas and how they intersect with one another. And so our goals are really to sort of lay out these best practices, and it's half sort of crowdsourcing and half sort of a reflection of analysis on emerging best practices in the field and the review of funding programs, but really to put together this information in one place so that no one has to feel that they are reinventing the wheel, and that we have this sort of living repository of best practices that we can build from and that we can move through our funding programs. And that's really sort of what the goals, the primary goals here are: making, streamlining and increasing the access to this information, helping to move projects through funding in a more streamlined way and through the new one-stop program. And I think sort of this, the feedback that's being collected and the questions that we're hearing right now are so critical to make sure that we're sort of getting across the type of information that you are looking for and needing to advance these projects, that we're sharing out sort of how it's going and being able to continue to learn and connect from one another when you see other towns doing similar work that you want to advance as well. And that we're continuing to build this out as we, strive to make better connections with the state-specific, resilient mass goals and targets, recommendations coming out of different plans, and then what's competitive through funding programs, and trying to connect the dots so that, we have these ideas, we have a pathway to move them forward to funding, and then we have the specific information you need in order to move these projects forwards, and the links to partners that are doing the same.
I'd also just add that this is also trying to connect to the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund that was proposed in the Mass Ready Act. And so that's another potential avenue for some of these projects to get funded through down the road. So another state initiative that this connects to.
Exactly.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, I just want to say we are at 1:03, so I would like to conclude this webinar. Thank you again for everyone for tuning in. There are a lot more questions, and so we'll stay on for a little bit after and go through some of the questions as well. But just know that we will share the slide decks, share the recording, and synthesize some of these questions into a document so that you can see all the questions being asked and our responses as well. One thing I will note also is that there are a lot of questions I'm seeing coming in terms of like, is this playbook going to be updated? How often? How can we provide additional input? Yes, to all of those above. We are continue work, MAPC, and I think I can say the same thing for PVPC as well as the MVP team, this project team, that we're committed to making sure that we will have opportunities to continue improving, adding additional contents, again, making sure all the priorities, all the recommended actions and blueprints to be developed are relevant and timely. So stay tuned. We will make sure to stay in touch and communicate any time that there's an updates to the playbook and things like that as we go into the future years. And of course, we really, really hope that you will check out this playbook, play around with the database and provide us feedback, any additional actions, resources, case studies, things that you are doing too. And if you are also wanting to partner with us in terms of developing implementation blueprints, we would love the collaborations and the partnership. So please reach out. So again, with that, thank you all. We provide Emma and my contact information here, as well as they'll be available on the Resilient Playbook website as well. So have a great rest of the day, and thank you to the team and Chief Hoffer and Undersecretary Antos for joining us today. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.